Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So today, I had the fun idea of showing how I render stuff. So the other day, I was looking at this cool artist. Their name is Casanovakevin, and I shall link them in the description below. But I was looking at one of their drawings, and I was like, wow, this is really pretty. I wonder how they rendered this. So I was just staring at it for the longest time. And then I realized, oh, there is a gradient in here, and it's a gradient overlay. And I was like, wow, this really changes things. Maybe I should try that for my own art. So I booked it all the way over to Clip Studio, opened that up. I picked up a random drawing and I got to it and I started like rendering, and here's one of the first attempts of me messing around with that fancy new rendering. I shall show it right here. Here it is. Wow, look at that. Yeah. And over the time, I've like perfected it, if you call it that. I've, improved that style, and I'm like, yeah, maybe I should show people so they can too be enlightened. So here it is. Here I am showing you how I do my fancy rendering. Here's a drawing I prepared earlier. It's a drawing of my character for my comic, and her name is Ophelia. The first thing I do is I go to the gradient tool. And there are 3 gradients I usually pick. I have the sunset one, the rainbow one, or this one. And I think the sunset one will fit this one the most. So what I like to do is I press shift, and then I make it like diagonal, like so. I think that works. And at first it'll look like this, and you're like, oh no, where'd the drawing go? Then I go over here, which is the blending mode section. I click on overlay, and then I adjust it so it looks nice. For this drawing specifically, 23% is pretty good. And we'll turn this off for now because I know it kind of sounds counterintuitive, but we need to turn it off in order to select the subject or subjects in this particular drawing, because I drew it twice. So first of all, I select the outside and make sure that auto select is referring to other layers as well. And it's done a pretty good selection. So I shall now select inside parts. So once it's done everything, I'll do the inverse selection, which is Ctrl Shift I. And wow, we should look at that inverse selection. Very nice. I go into a new layer. I fill it with a random color. This isn't like the final thing, but we'll use this random fill as our selection to do the rendering. So I press Ctrl D to deselect that. And yep, everything seems fine. This is the drawing. Here's the random selection. Or we hide the random selection. Or we press Ctrl, and we click on the layer thumbnail, like right here. Do not click on this part because nothing happens when you press Ctrl and click on that. You have to click on the thumbnail. So once you press Ctrl and you click on the thumbnail, it will select everything in that layer. So what we want to do now is open up a new layer. Then we press G to get to the gradient section. And this time I'm doing the sunset layer again. I'm going to do it from the opposite direction, so I'm feeling funky today. Then I go down to multiply. I adjust it to about where I see fit. Yeah, that seems fine. And I press this little button here, which kind of looks like Japan, but not really. But it's called Create Layer Mask. I click on that, and boom, it's got a layer mask. What's the point of the layer mask, you might ask? Well, so what we're doing here is changing the colors and stuff. Because some of the colors in this gradient don't really go well. And sometimes go over to here and remove stuff. And sometimes you go over here to change the colors. So what I'll be doing now is I press Ctrl I to inverse the selection. And then I use this handy dandy lasso fill tool. So you find the lasso fill tool originally in this little figure section here. And you can find that by pressing U. I moved the lasso fill to be here in the selection area because I thought that was more useful for me. Okay, so one thing I forgot to mention is that the lasso fill tool is exclusive to Clip Studio Paint. But in Photoshop specifically, there is a kind of alternative to it where you use the lasso tool, make a selection, and then you press Alt and Delete at the same time, and then boom, it fills in your selection. And it's pretty neat. I use the lasso fill to just do this. Oh. You have to make sure that it's set to a solid color. Oops. Because if it's not set to a solid color, it will just erase. So here I am setting to a solid color. And you can kind of see the color right there, but it's not too obvious. And that's why I want to go into here to change the color. And then I use this little lock transparent pixels, which is also called alpha lock in other programs. I go here and I like to use my color history. There are quite a few colors I like. So a color that would work really well for skin tones. This one, let's make it a little bit warm. And I use the lasso fill again. See, look at that. Works a lot better. A lot more contrast. And then I go back to here. And I just start filling in the areas. I go back here. And I use the lasso fill to go over areas I think we'll need. Sometimes I do the inverse and sometimes I do this. It's where I have the color in fill and then I just erase that. Sometimes I don't have like a clear lighting idea. So I just do it this way where I add the colors. I feel like this way works the best for me. So the lighting for this drawing is coming from the left. So we need to put that into consideration. And go back to this part, and then I add in bits. I go back to black and white little thing here. Let's just start adding the shading. To some this might look really convoluted, but for me it works rather nicely. Usually I go quite ham with this. One thing I like to do is just mess around a bit with the colors as well as the brushes I use. I just press C to go to the transparent pixels so I can still use the brush I want, but it erases instead. I keep switching back and forth between the color brush and the transparent brush, and I'm on the mask right now, so it's not affecting the color, so I can use any color for here. The way Clip Studio works with masks is kind of different to the way other programs work with masks. In, for example, Photoshop, you'd use black and white. So black would erase and white would unerase. And you can use the many different shades of black and white to work with the transparencies. For example, a 50% grey would be like a 50% transparencies. But the way Clip Studio works is slightly different to that. What I wanted to do to erase transparent, I'd go to the actual brush and then I'd go down to the opacity and adjust that. So I'm going to work on her dress. I think that's fun. I'm going to areas that have high contrast. I like to use a mixture of the lasso fill tool as well as big brush. So I like this color I picked. So I'm going to go back to the gradient section. I'm just going to incorporate that. I'm going in really roughly because I do like the kind of rough, sketchy look that comes with using the gradient and just painting on top of that. Looks rather painterly. So I'm going back to this. Instead of using this color, I'm not sure that worked too well. It surprisingly does. But I'm going to go for more of a purpley color this time. I'll have better contrast with her hair. I'm going to go over to this little full body drawing here. And I'm going to go to the most shadowy part of the drawing. I'm just going to start filling it in. Going to the areas with the most contrast. Using the lasso fill on fabric is just so fun and satisfying. Yes, I'm aware that my rendering doesn't really look like Casanovakevins, but I mainly use it as a spring roll really. I saw that they used gradients and I was like, whoa, I want to use gradients as well. That's pretty cool. And then I went off on my own different direction. And I recommend you try experimenting with stuff like that instead of like specifically copying how an artist does something. Just try experimenting a little bit and seeing what you like. I'm going to go lock the pixels again because I'm going to work on the shoes. And I can turn this fancy overlay on as well. And I'm going to do this other fun trick. So I bring up the hue saturation tool by pressing Ctrl U. And then I'm going to adjust the hue until I like it. I think this blue works quite well. There it is. It's my fun little way of rendering. Hope you found it helpful. And if you want to know more, you can always comment below and I can like elaborate more if you want. And thanks for watching. See you in your next video. Goodbye.